Unfortunately, I am back in the freaking building again. I am. Hey, it's Allie. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. Dang it, Grandpa, they are at it again. There are always going to be at least two fandoms that are always just gonna be there, like in the background of my mind. Two fandoms where no one would ever outright say that they were into it, but then they would say something or make a certain type of joke that just has you go, I know who you are and I know where you've been. And that is, of course, the Homestuck fandom and the Danganronpa fandom. Danganronpa is a series of games, mostly murder mystery visual novels that started in 2010 with the last one coming out in 2017. Well, so far, the game follows a group of students who are all trapped in a school by an evil bear. The gimmick is that every single one of them is an ultimate, a skill that makes them a prodigy that got them into the school in the first place. The other gimmick? Someone has to kill another student and get away with it. A class trial is held to find the culprit. If found, the killer gets executed. If not, the whole class gets executed and the killer gets to survive. It is your job as the main character to figure out who done did it, who the mastermind of the whole operation is, and maybe find some friends along the way. So with that all being said, why is like 90% of this fandom queer people? Let's talk about that. Ooh, okay, good mythical morning. If at any time you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe because I make videos like this all the time. And comment down below just how you feel about Danganronpa in general. Danganronpa 2x2. We're getting Danganronpa 2. I'm not gonna have time to talk about that, but like if you guys want to talk about that, put it down in the comments. Let's start a conversation about it. Of course, I put out a form on my Patreon, of course, but then also on YouTube later to asking you guys how you guys feel about Danganronpa and especially the queer themes, or if you think there are any queer themes, queer characters, all of that. But if you missed it, go ahead and put it down in the comments below. And hey, let's just jump into our last video of October.
Fun in the sun.
So let us try to answer the question of why queer people love Danganronpa. And honestly, we need to start off with the plot and the medium of the game itself. As I said, Danganronpa is a murder mystery visual novel. And visual novels already have a very large queer audience. If you don't know what a visual novel is, essentially it's an interactive fiction game. There can be different elements to it, but the main mechanic of the game is you're reading essentially a visual novel. It's kind of descriptive in of itself. If you go to my itch.io/AllieDreamer, you will find the last game I just put out is a visual novel. There's like a little puzzle there because it's like kind of an escape room thing. There's only one puzzle because I made it in a week, but that is basically what a visual novel is. Its emphasis is on the plot or whatever you're trying to solve, in the case of Danganronpa, a murder mystery, but largely any other type of mechanic is not really there, or it's there very minimally. I should note that, of course, anything I talk about, including the games themselves, not only queer people can be into them, right? This is just what I have noticed as a gamer, a developer, and a queer person, and where we tend to coagulate. And I don't really have an answer on why queer people tend to flock towards visual novels so much. If, however, gun to my head, I had to choose, I think that it is because it is a safer place to have an entry point into the gaming industry landscape, you know? Girly, I've been here for a while. I've loved games since I was a kid. I've been wanting to make games since I was in high school. So that means I was here during Gamergate. And I'm not going to get into that. There's been plenty of videos on it. Honestly, I am like a kind of a proponent of, I'm one of those people who like genuinely believe that Gamergate fundamentally changed the way the internet works and how politics work, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day. Other people have talked about it and done all their theories and actual like research on that. Just know it was a bad time to be a woman, especially a queer woman on the internet. Luckily I was a child, so I didn't, take the brunt of most of that stuff, but like it was there. Okay, and it was definitely in the back of my mind growing up. And so I can see how queer people, especially queer femmes, maybe weren't too keen on trying to join. Like, they may love games, they may love all different types of games, as I did. My Steam library is a mess, but entering into these community spaces were not very welcoming to queer people and women, right? So they are trying to find a space for themselves, right? And visual novels just happen to be a space that is pretty open because it's very vague, right? Like most real gamers, I put that in quote, this is just what people call themselves, real gamers, don't play visual novels, don't play walking sims, don't play these puzzle types of games, right? And so they happen to be a space where queer people can have a good entry point into the games industry without being harassed as much, right? visual novels are also very, very character driven and story driven. And so the emphasis is on creating characters and creating stories that a reader slash player will connect with. So this leads, of course, to a very open area for you as a queer person to write about being queer, to write about other characters being queer, any of these types of things. Some of my earliest games I remember, some of my earliest indie games I remember are like something like a normal lost phone or something like that. And okay, spoiler alert, but this game is like almost 20 years old at this point. It's over 10 years old, definitely. A normal lost phone, you find a phone and you're like going through it. It's mostly a visual novel with a couple of puzzles sprinkled in with a phone interface. And you find out at the end that I'm pretty sure, I could be butchering this, but I'm pretty sure the person's phone, who it is, they essentially ran away from home or ran away from their life because they are queer and weren't really accepted. I could be dead ass wrong. I will put that in post, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's about. And it's one of the first, I remember this game so clearly because I played it on my like Girl Scout trip to fucking Europe and in a hotel in Ireland. And I remember playing this game and being so enraptured by it and enraptured by the story of it. And how it was just one of those things. It was like the first time I ever like saw a queer story in this light, like in a video game before. So it was like, it really blew my mind as like a small queer kid, right? So I can see why queer people would gravitate towards something like this. It is a safer medium for the most part. And also it's a place where you can, you know, expel yourself a lot. So, you know, tend to play and make these types of games. So when a very eccentric, campy Japanese murder mystery visual novel comes out where they had to replace the blood with bright pink blood comes out, well, I mean, queer people are going to be all over that. Come on now. Even if the characters aren't explicitly queer all the time, there's still a lot of queer themes, I think. There isn't a good heterosexual explanation for the toast scene in SDR2, you know? And even with the questionably written rep, like Ibuki openly liking girls and the Chihiro situation, there's a lot for us to latch onto and develop beyond what the game laid out. I don't know a lot of franchises that have designs that feel queer-coded or based in queer fashion, but Danganronpa does it in a way that I eat up. A lot of the plot centers around a bunch of misfits in a school, in a high school, being forced into forced proximity with one another and coming to terms with their own quirks and the things that make them special in this society. A lot of what the main characters go through is being unsure of themselves and not knowing if they will be accepted for who they are by their peers and society at large. Not to mention the entire theme of all the Danganronpa games is hope versus despair. Despair has essentially caused the apocalypse. I'm sorry to anybody who's like watching this and they're like, what the fuck is that? What do you mean despair caused the apocalypse? And the despair that caused the apocalypse was caused by all the students of the second game. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm so sorry. I don't have time to explain. I mean, I will kind of, but like largely I don't have time to explain. But with this whole idea of hope versus despair, you have these kids whose whole thing basically is like graduating from their class, right? From this like murder mystery that they've gone through and going out into the real world. And it's like pretty obvious, like a one-to-one kind of like allegory for kids going through the hell that is high school and then having to graduate and then trying to go out into the real world that is full of despair and still choosing to remain hopeful despite it. Like that is, at least for me, the core theme that I take out of Danganronpa is like, despite the despair that is in the world, choosing to still have hope despite the fact is like the core theme for me. And of course, this is a Japanese like coming of age story. So this idea that society beats you down, like if you've ever played Persona 5, that's a big theme in Persona 5, right? Is how society beats down a lot of its youth. And I'm quoting Nazumi VA's videos about Danganronpa that you absolutely should watch, especially the second one, because I believe the second one is the best game, but we'll get to that. I'm pretty sure that was a very contentious thing to say. Please be nice in the comments, be nice. But I'm quoting them when they say that, like, you know, this game very heavily reflects Japanese society and the way that it treats teenagers and this idea of hope and despair, you know, how people choose to grow up and people who fall through the cracks and aren't necessarily like taken care of. Like society as adults do not give their children the adequate like tools to grow up. Just kind of let them become the adults, right? And then kind of perpetuate perpetuate this cycle. And just like Persona 5, because of this whole fall through the cracks, outcast of society type deal that happens to a lot of Japanese youth, queer people can relate to that heavy. And that's exactly what happened with Persona 5, is that queer people, no matter what stage in life they're at, can relate to this idea of being seen as kind of an outcast, of kind of like the potential man of things, and you are wasting your potential if you don't decide to conform to society. Growing up feeling othered, finding a family to call your own, feeling like it's y'all against the world, that's like peak textbook teen queer experience right there. And oh yeah, did I mention this game is about murder? One, it's very camp. It does deal with serious circumstances, so the tone isn't exactly fun, but everything from the character's design to the poses and dialogue and even the trials and executions are very extra. 2, it has strong emotions. Every character, for how silly they might look or act, usually has a tragic backstory and will have a crash out of sorts where they'll scream out all of their bottled up feelings, and the answer to their problems can be some form of self-acceptance. 3, it's peak 2000/2010s. It was very popular when the fandom culture online and shipping was at its best? Worst? Its maximum. 4, strong character relationships. It's a story where many cocky characters are forced in close proximity and interact a lot. So the bonds between them are a big part, and there are many variants and possibilities. So again, a lot of ground for shipping. Girl, this game is so game. It is one of the games of all time, definitely. You immediately have to get on board with the crazy character designs, the hot pink blood, the murder bear, the esocentric executions, the melodrama, and where there is camp, there is queer. There is a large level of suspension of disbelief that you have to have in order to play this game. Like, the second game takes place on an island, and the first thing you see is a twink above you. The campiness of it all. Danganronpa as a concept is so camp. I'm long past my Daganronpa days since I was very into it in quarantine, like full on hyperfixated, and haven't thought about it since now, but I think the game was a perfectly crafted recipe for queer fandom culture to go crazy. You got banger characters designs for the cosplayers, dynamics between many characters that feel shipping art / fanfics, a character / plot setup that makes it very easy to make your own OCs, and a heavy amount of lore, not to mention the edginess factor of the whole death game and the dramatic executions. I personally think that playing Danganronpa is a canon event for every queer 13-year-old for all those reasons. And I couldn't have said it better myself, honestly. This world is so ripe for the picking for making OCs, whether that be a self-insert or an entirely new character that you have come up with. I mentioned in my last video when I was talking about fandom horror stories, an artist named Parako, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, here on YouTube. They make YouTube videos, but they also just post their art in their community tab on YouTube, and a lot of it is their own Danganronpa OCs. They do Danganronpa fan art, of course, Nagito hyperfixation over there, but also they make their own OCs. In fact, they have an entire cast of Danganronpa OCs. Danganronpa fan games are all over the place. You will not last 2 seconds on Ista.io without finding at least one Danganronpa fan game, and it's because there's a formula to it, right? Especially now that we've had 3 games and some spin-off games, there's a formula to it. You have to get was it 10? Is it 10 or 13? I don't know how many. You get however many you want, right? Cast of characters, give them all different essentially quirks that they can have, right? Give them a tragic anime backstory. It's a good writing exercise, honestly. Give them a tragic anime backstory, give them a quirky outfit, and boom, bam, boom, bop, bop. You have your Danganronpa characters. And from there, it's another writing exercise of trying to figure out the murder mystery of it all. Who's gonna kill who? Why would someone kill who? Who you want to be the survivors? That's always a big thing. A big thing with Danganronpa, was it 2x2? Is it 2x2? That's how they pronounce it in the direct, right? Danganronpa 2x2. Anyway, in that it's a big deal, the fact that things are going to be different, and speculating on who's going to be the survivor this go around, who's going to kill who, why would that happen, what type of killings will happen, what type of executions. It's a whole thing. So it's very ripe for making your own story and inserting yourself. And just like with Harry Potter was a lot like that. That breeds a really big queer fandom, especially kids. Obviously all kids love to do that. See the Divergent series, the Hunger Games series, any time a kid can put themselves in a world and give themselves some type of power, they're gonna do it. But specifically for queer kids, that level of escapism where you could go to a world where the biggest problem in your life isn't your identity, people are going to cling on to that like heavy. The camp nature of the game is right up the alley of queer culture. To queer fashion, to the ballroom scene, to the over dramatization of life, the over exaggeration of Danganronpa's character archetypes, fashion, and plot almost feels like a diaspora of queer culture. Because it's absurd, but that doesn't take away from the genuine storytelling either. It's fun and tragic. The mysteries are creative and have a lot of twists and turns. The character designs are unique and exaggerated and reflect the characters so well. I think queer people just tend to find comfort in tragedy and absurdity. Ishimondo comes to mind, honestly, with that. And in general, because the characters are so absurd and exaggerated, a lot of their backstories also feel queer in a lot of ways. A lot of the characters, despite being the best of the best in their field, are still outcast. Also, Komaeda is there. Like, please listen to some of these plot lines. Chihiro, a cross-dressing hacker, ends up murdered by a biker gang leader in the men's bathroom due to jealousy over standing on business, only for that person's body to end up in the girls' bathroom, and another guy made it to look like the local serial killer did it, but everyone catches on because the serial killer only kills men, and no one knew that person was cross-dressing, even the serial killer. So they find out that the biker guy did it because he was jealous that Chihiro wanted to get stronger because they were bullied for being weak, and that's why they cross-dressed. So the biker guy gets turned into butter, and the hacker guy is dead. Wait, no, actually he's a computer program that will show up later in the game and help save the day, only to be killed again, and then will show up in the second game. Okay, the most memorable thing about Danganronpa is its characters. Each character seems especially designed to piss you off and also simultaneously be your little meow meow. In the first game, we have characters like Owada and Ishimaru, one of the ships. One who has a boisterous and overzealousness sense of justice and yells like a lot. And the other who has a strong sense of manhood and also yells like a lot. Can two dudes find love if one of them is a freak for justice and the other one is just a freak? The answer may surprise you. I think that it's an interesting question considering how kind of homophobic and definitely transphobic the original series can get at times. Not going to start listing those parts, I'm sure most people know. As one possible answer, I would link it to the franchise's description of Ultimates. I think this label of the best at their profession/field inevitably leads to the main character of each installment kind of always being the most quote-unquote normal person in the cast. In addition, I'm convinced that many of these characters are actively being made more atypical to make them either stand out during trials or leave a strong impression even if they die without real development. I think this lends itself to relating to them and caring about them a lot better as a queer person. I remember a long while ago, I personally read a Danganronpa fic that was kind of set in a normal high school where the whole cast were queer kids in school while the rest of was kind of homophobic. Granted, back then I was barely sure of my own identity and I barely remember anything else about this fic, but I think what stayed in my mind is telling. In Danganronpa characters, I found a sort of safety and solidarity that I hadn't quite known that well until then. My background is generally very accepting, so you can imagine how this would be for someone without that privilege. Now, if you are unsure what this person is talking about when they talk about homophobic and transphobic things, the first game came out in 2010. And it is a product of 2010. Even the most, I would say, like inclusive media of the early 2000s tend to be slightly homophobic, transphobic in some type of way, right? Especially if they even tried to include queer people into games, movies, shows, whatever. There was always something in an early 2000s show or movie. Unless it was made like indie and by queer people, most of the time the inclusion of queer people, even with the best intentions in mind, with early 2000s stuff, tends to still be somewhat offensive. And Danganronpa, of course, is no exception to that. Now, personally, for me, I do believe that we can have, we can still claim the rep of certain queer characters. There are some like canonically queer characters that I will talk about later. We can claim them still, in my opinion, because of like the intention there. Right? The intention was to have a cast of characters that reflect the diaspora, I guess, of children in high school and stuff like that. And some of those are going to be kids that are questioning their gender and sexuality, right? Obviously, that is not to excuse any show, movie, game, whatever made in the early 2000s that says slurs or anything like that. Again, I think the intention matters more when we're talking about early 2000s things. We're talking about things made after like 2014 or like whatever. I like at that point I'm like, girl, you should have known better. But like things before the early 2000s, I mean, granted, you should have known better anyway. Like a slur is a slur is a slur, right? But like in terms of like trying to depict gay people and trying to depict like trans people and stuff like that, there was a lot that needed to be done. And we talk about like why representation is so important. It's because as the years go on, you get better and better and better representation, so other people know how to put better and better representation, right? People are going off of their own stereotypes and their own biases about things. Like we have, I think her name is Ibuki in the third game, I'm pretty sure, and she is basically a man-hating lesbian, but she's not like, you know, people talk about man-hating lesbians nowadays, it's like, oh, I just don't like men, but like but like her specific archetype is, or stereotype I should say, is a type of lesbian who's like really pushy onto women in a predatory way that is very, very harmful to gay communities. To call any type of person predatory towards like especially like straight people or anybody for that matter, that's not great. However, I can see a world where her character, if it was made today, her character would already like be leagues better. Like all you had to do really is just take that part out, like the part where she's like coming on to girls like a little bit too strong. Like yes, she could care about the girls more than she cares about the guys, but you can do that in a way that doesn't come off as predatory. Yeah, all you had to do is just take that out and you will have a character that is like still kind of like stereotypical, but like not in a like super offensive way. I think it's also important to bring up the fact that a lot of Danganronpa characters tend to be mischaracterized, especially if they've had their arcs cut short, because most people don't do the free time events in which you go talk to other characters and you find out more about them. These like pad out the game a lot, but it gives a lot of background and story to these characters and why they are the way that they are. And so a lot of the time people will just take whatever like archetype, stereotype is at face value for these characters because they're not doing the work to go find out more about these characters in game before these characters die or kill or whatever. This is what this person is talking about when they talk about these like things where it's like the rep is there. Is it questionable? Yes, but it is there. And I think the difference is how people react to said rep within the game itself is what to me denotes, especially when we're looking at like early 2000s works, denotes whether or not this was like intentionally trying to, you know, give a good like, oh, this person just happens to be here because they just happen to be queer or like whatever, versus like I put this person here for the sake of being a punching bag and the sake for me as the author to espouse my transphobic or homophobic beliefs. And that clearly, at least in my opinion, wasn't the case here, but we'll get to that when we get to those characters. So I think that despite it heavily being a product of its time, yeah, and that's why like Danganronpa 3 people kind of side-eye a little bit because it did come out in 2017. Not saying everybody was the wokest in 2017, but it did come out at a time where it's like you definitely should know better, and if a character is being specifically homophobic, transphobic, whatever, then there has to be a reason for that, right? Like we have to like look past as like, oh, is this character being homophobic, transphobic like because the author is homophobic, transphobic, or are they being homophobic or transphobic because that actually is a part of their character? Even if you may not like that because you like that character, that might just be a part of their character for a very specific reason, and not just because the like author just decided to put those views into the game, right? That all being said, we need to talk about fucking Komaeda, Nagito Komaeda, this motherfucker. Hey it's October, aka my favorite month of the year, and what's a better way to celebrate than divorced exes? So many divorced exes. I'm calling this a Spam 10 Halloween store merch drop. That's kind of a mouthful. We're working on the title. And right now in my shop, we have a new Tenna sticker, a Spamton sticker, a Tenna print, a Spam Tenner sticker sheet, and if you just want to celebrate good old Halloween, I have some unique looking ghost stickers. Oh, and did I mention everything is on sale? Yeah, that's right. Use code SPOOKY15 for a discount on your order. And if you're watching this right now, the sale only is for another 24 hours. On November 2nd is when the sale will end. My shop will remain open past that, but if you want specifically to use this discount code, you're gonna need to do it in the next 24 hours. If you're watching past that, sorry. But the stuff is probably still up in the store, so you can go get it still. I just wanted to say thanks for the crazy summer, and also October is like Christmas to me, so I just wanted to spread that around. So go ahead and get yourself some Halloween / Spam Tenna divorced exes yaoi goodness on my website. That's dreamalley.bigcartel.com. It's like that one alleyway you might have seen in a dream once. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll find your way there. Link in the description. And of course, if you join my Patreon right now, you will get an even bigger discount on top of early access to videos, forums, Discord access, and any other extra videos I decide to post on there. So go ahead and check it out. It's all linked down below. If you live internationally, I will have all of this stuff up on Etsy. And just like last time, I want to know what you're doing while watching this video. I love hearing you guys talk about making art and cleaning and doing work. I love that. So let me know what you guys are up to down in the comments below. And we are so close to 30K. Just thank you so much. And if you haven't subscribed yet, become a yapper today. It's free. And yeah, back to your regularly scheduled programming. See you. Because Nagito exists. Heart. Half a heart. Oh, Nagito, aka fingers in his ass guy. Before we had driving in my car right after a beer, we had fingers in his ass, okay? Nagito Komaeda is the ultimate lucky student, and he is introduced in Super Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair. Where do I even start with him? Oh my god. The game starts off relatively normal with him up until the point where the first class trial happens. As I've said, the themes of the games are hope and despair. At the end of every game, you have to prove that hope will always beat out despair in some way. And this guy believes in hope to an almost very obsessive and disturbing degree. Like he would do anything in the name of hope, which is very interesting if you know like his whole backstory. It's a whole thing without having to explain the entire plot of like Super Danganronpa like 2. Like let me try to explain this in a way. So spoilers for Super Danganronpa 2. It's like a 10-year-old game, but like just spoilers. So this entire idea, this comes at the like end of the game. This entire time, Nagito is acting very, very weird. He's very obsessed with the idea of hope. He's very obsessed with the ultimates and the fact that like he believes that ultimates are the key to the salvation of the world, essentially. Like he's like, oh, I need to be the stepping stone. He believes himself lesser than because he doesn't believe that his like talent is real talent. He doesn't believe that his ultimate is real. Like he's just like, oh, lucky. Okay, like he doesn't believe that is like real talent that could like do anything useful other than for himself, which it has been proven basically that his luck only helps himself and not others. So I can see how that would like really fuck him up. Like he lost his parents, he had like a chronic like illness, like all of these things, despite like, you know, all the good things that have happened to him, you know, obtaining his parents' fortune, being able to come to Hope Speak Academy, all of this stuff, right? And he's just still like, well, I'm still useless to the world. My talent is useless to the world. So he believes in trying to prop up everybody else and trying to push them, sometimes not in a great way, trying to push them towards this idea of like hope and like pushing their talents and ultimates to the level of like, if you are worthy, basically, you will prevail. Essentially, kind of that throughout the game. And he definitely believes this about the main character. He becomes like kind of like this with the main character, despite how like obsessive he is and kind of aiding like people or like at least trying to aid people in murder. He's just kind of he's essentially saying since the beginning of the like first class trial, he's like, yeah, I will help you if you believe that your ultimate talent is going to be the best and like will beat out hope and like will be the next hope or like whatever, I will do whatever I can to help you out with that. Vice versa, if the, you know, the team comes together and uses their hope and their ultimates, then I will help them with that. Like, it's just like, okay, dude. Okay. So he's just like a character in the beginning that you cannot like trust, right? However, he like becomes friends with you and is like very like obsessed with you to an almost like disturbing degree again. And then he learns something about like halfway through the game, through like right at its climax, about you as the main character, Hajime Hinata. And he basically learns that you're a reserve student. So I have to go back to the novels in this game. Essentially, Hope Speak Academy is like a breeding testing ground for a bunch of different ultimates. They are trying to breed the ultimate, essentially. And so not only are they trying to, you know, that's kind of like eugenics when you think about it. wait. Anyway, so they bring all these students in, right? But they're running out of money because they're a research lab first and foremost instead of a fucking school. So they decide to allow reserve students in, aka people who have no talent, quote unquote. However, they have to pay exorbitant amount of fees to go to this school. So if you get chosen to go to the school, great, but you're a reserve student, you have no talent, you have to pay a large amount of fees, and they don't really give a shit about you. You're just here to put the words Hope's Peak Academy on your fucking resume, right? And so without like getting too much more into the weeds of it, Nagito finds out that Hajime was a reserve student and he gets mad. This whole time Hajime does not know like anything about like his past. Like everybody knows what ultimate they are and he does not know. They have kind of like lost their school memory, so they don't know where they were in school, if they were friends in school, yada 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 yada, blah 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 blah, right? And the reason why Hajime couldn't remember what his ultimate was is because he never had one. Technically, I say technically, there's a triple twist later on, but like that's unimportant for now. So when Nagito finds that out, he like looks at him in disgust. He's like, ew, I fucking hate you.
Let me get this straight, dumbass! You have a fully reloaded shotgun, but
he's really just kind of like, you're not who I thought you were. And like Hajime's like what? And obviously that like, you know, hurts when Hajime finds out that he doesn't have like a talent or ultimate. He feels like completely useless, even though you are the main character and you've been the one solving the cases this entire time. Like he still feels like absolutely fucking useless and upset about that fact, right? It all comes back around later, even further later, when we find out that Nagito actually knew the real truth. And the real truth is that that entire class, including Hajime, were remnants of despair, which just meant like the original evil girly Junko. They were basically her lackeys, and they were the OG ones that were just kind of like, this world sucks and we're just gonna inflict everybody with the despair disease and basically start the apocalypse. So they essentially started the apocalypse and were the first ones to pretty much fall into despair. I highly suggest you look at Nazumi VA's video about all the Danganronpa games, but especially Danganronpa 2, because there's a lot of lore there, there's a lot to explain, and of course like I talk about like the themes, which I will touch on later, but they really go in depth about the themes there. So just know that all this hope talk used to be the opposite for Nagito. So Nagito, his brain is going through it. His brain is going through it. Now, of course, you may be asking, okay, all right, we know how crazy he is, but what does this have to do with him being gay? Well, aside from the obvious being obsessed with the main character, a lot. Even at the end, he still believes that like him and Hajime were like besties, okay? And of course, let me read you something from the wiki. Now, it is the wiki, so take it with a grain of salt, but I do believe this to be true. Furthermore, even though he greatly admires and claims to love all of the Ultimates for their talent and capability to embody hope, he doesn't really care for them as individuals. He isn't truly saddened by their deaths and even appears to dislike some of them as people. Similarly, he may not have anything personal against the talentless. In fact, the only student Nagito genuinely cared for is Hajime, a talentless reserve course student. And that is because, honestly, I think despite having no talent, he still possessed a lot of hope, right? And that's what Nagito cares about more than anything else. Even after learning the truth about himself and the others, he truly deeply believes that like, this person like holds a lot of hope, right? And thus his obsession with him. Like Hajime, out of everybody else, it definitely is the one to like push forward the most. There's only like one time during the second game, and it was actually after Nagito's death that like Hajime even thinks about like giving up, possibly, right? Where he's just like thrown into like complete despair over learning the truth about everything and learning the truth about himself, right? And I would also like to read a quote from the game that my friend sent me, translated from Japanese to English. So there is a moment in the game where Nagito basically tells Hajime that he loves him. No, I'm not joking. But the thing is, he tries to cover it up. And the way it gets translated from Japanese to English makes it a lot more subtle. But essentially, and let me read this from my friend who like knows Japanese. Okay, yeah, I looked it up, and to make sure I wasn't lying, he says the particle indicating the object of the sentence after you, meaning you is the object of love, and then repeats himself and changes the possessive to make it your hope instead. He has to backtrack in Japanese, and it's obvious what he meant to say. But in English, he just pauses like he changed his mind before he got too far into the sentence. You can hand wave away the English as him being dramatic, but in Japanese, you can tell he was going to say he loved Hajime. The English equivalent would be something like, I'm in love with you, your hope, your hope. I'm in love with your hope. Okay, Nagito. Okay. And honestly, between like his tragic anime backstory being the most tragic out of everything, and also him butting himself into the narrative very, very heavily in the second game, and of course all of the queer themes surrounding him, it is no wonder that he became essentially the poster child for both the fandom and the game itself. And you may be like, wow, that's such a toxic ship. First of all, please name a non-toxic ship in Danganronpa. I'll wait. Okay, Sakura Oi, they don't count. Okay, that's one. But name another one. I bet you can. They all have trauma and they are not good at dealing with it because they are teenagers. A big theme of Danganronpa, especially within the second game, is how the concepts of ultimate and talent and Hope's Peak oppress the untalented and how they are seen as lesser for something that really isn't their fault. I feel like it's pretty easy to tie this into the queer experience, especially with the school aspect, since around then is when a lot of queer kids start becoming othered from their classmates and peers for their queerness. The characters in the story can be subpar at times, but I think it adds to it since you can imagine what if this part was done differently? What was going on with this character that we didn't learn about, etc., etc. A lot of times you can add a queer narrative to these underutilized aspects. I think that's a really interesting point because queer people have been doing that for decades, years and years, but especially since the dawn of fandom with Star Trek and stuff like that, making fan fiction, making characters and inserting queer themes and finding queer subtext where people would say there isn't any, which you don't know that unless you are the author themselves, you don't know that, right, is a thing that queer people have been doing for a while, right? So it is no wonder when you're even given a sliver of a crumb of something, people are going to jump on it. Queer people especially are going to jump on it. And what's lovely about fiction and what's lovely about art is that everybody can have a different interpretation of it, and someone reading something in a queer lens does not take away from other readings of the story. In fact, honestly, only stands to add more to that story when you think about things from a queer perspective, right? And Danganronpa, especially when read through a not just a oppressed teenager perspective, but an oppressed queer teenager perspective, it just enriches, is that even a word? Enriches the story. Super Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair, gotta say the full title. I wholly agree with Nezumi Vie's take on the fact that this is about the kids who kind of fall through the cracks of the system and who aren't really helped back up in any way, shape, or form. And the reason why I harp on DR2 is because of that reason for the queer experience and why queer people love Danganronpa. I think that Danganronpa 2 is the most popular game. Arguably, I also believe it's the best game. Again, please be nice in the comments. But I think that is because I think the characters are the strongest. You could argue about the plot and yada, 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 but I think the characters are the strongest. They have the most memorable characters out of all of them. And not just that, but they also feel like a found family of sorts. And the fact that it's not just a wholesome found family of oh, we were a bunch of strangers and now we're all together. It's also this idea of a found family that we're also found family even in tragedy, even in toxicness, I guess you could say. They still decided to stay with each other even as they all fell into despair. And toxic or not, that has a lot of the makings of a queer friend group. Who's been in a toxic queer friend group? Raise your hand. We all have. Raise your hand. And if you haven't, I'm sorry, it's a canon event. You will eventually. And despite that, though, there's still a level of I look upon a lot of those friend groups fondly, or with man, I hope those people are doing all right, because hurt people. And especially as teenagers, a lot of that stuff just didn't matter. There are some things that it's okay, wow, that what you did there really hurt. But as you grow up, you start to realize that oh, okay, that wasn't as bad. In the moment, it felt like the end of the world, quite literally in Danganronpa's case. But but in the end, you still hope that those people are doing okay. Unless, again, they did you even dirtier than dirt. That's a whole nother conversation. But for the most part, I feel that this idea of found family, being outcasts, all this other type of stuff. It just reads as queer. I know, The diversity of characters and the aspect of a lot of them holding a piece of themselves back / having secrets. I feel this aspect of having to put on a mask for others is something so many queer people experience in their day-to-day life. On top of this, I feel there is a lot of queer coding among the cast, or some straight up queer characters such as Suichi, Tenko, Chihiro, sadly Teru, etc. With varied depictions that don't just make most of them out to be some absolute freak weirdo monsters or perfect and cookie cutter. I feel the queer aspects of the story feel so much more natural. And as I've said before, there are just straight up canonically queer characters. Shout out to that one person who really wants Teru Teru to have a redemption arc in Danganronpa 2x2. What sucks about these characters sometimes is that they get cut short because they have to like die. A lot of them have to die, and so what happens is you'll start to see some type of character development with them, or they won't get any character development at all, and then they'll just go poof and never to be seen again, and you know that sucks. So in Danganronpa 2x2, different scenarios, different people who are gonna die and live and yada yada yada, or at least different people committing murder, so we get to find out like their tragic backstories, why they would do stuff, etc etc. Teru Teru was a pervert character, like typical pervert character. He is bisexual / pansexual, so equal opportunity pervert. Yay. Isn't that the same thing that happened with Mineta? Wasn't there like a rumor going around that he was bi? Anyway, because he was in love with like Midoriya or some shit. I remember that being a thing. Please tell me I'm not the only one who like with My Hero Academia. I'm not the only one like was there when people were saying it was. I think it started off as a joke, but then people were like, wait a minute, like the way he acts towards like Midoriya is kind of anyway. So Teru Teru, despite having a tragic anime backstory, like his whole character kind of got reduced down because he wasn't there for very long, because spoiler alert, he committed the first murder, so he wasn't there for very long. It was really boiled down to, oh, he's a pervert. He's a pervert. Every single time he talks to anybody, he is a fucking pervert. In fact, it's used in the trial against him when he wasn't there for when like a panty shot fucking happened, right? So like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I hope that this character who happens to be bisexual, pansexual gets better character development. However, I think it's hard because it's like, in theory, if this person is supposed to be seen as just a horrible person, which I don't think any character is fully made to be out as a horrible person in Danganronpa, not even Junko, but with Teru Teru, because we saw so little of him and his character never got any type of development, like we could have seen maybe, is there a reason why he's a pervert? Like obviously it doesn't make, you know, an excuse for him being a pervert, but at least then it would add some depth to his character. And so he's just really easy to hate. And him being like the only like canonically bisexual, pansexual character is just like, okay. And of course they also mentioned Chihiro. Now Chihiro is a complicated thing because at the end of the day, Chihiro is a cross-dresser. They are not trans. However, their story is very trans-coded. Whether you believe they are trans femme or trans masc, it does not matter. Like it doesn't matter in the sense that like, because you can relate both to them, their story is inherently queer, whether or not they themselves identify as such. Just straight up. That's just straight up how that is going, right? I said before, Chihiro is a cross-dresser. Chihiro is a mab, and they got bullied a lot as a kid for being a man who is a boy, I guess in that case, who is very small, frail, weak, and feminine. And so to stop getting bullied, they ended up cross-dressing as a woman to make sure that they don't get like bullied again, basically, because everyone treated them as a girl because they fit in so well as a girl, right? And so there are multiple ways in which that can be read. It can be read, my friend likes to read it as someone who is trans masc, aka they came out as a man, they were AFAB, came out as a man, got bullied for looking like a female, and then decided to just go back into the closet, right? And that fits with the actual storyline that happens in the game. Also, like the idea that like they felt more comfortable being in feminine clothes, not just because of the bullying, but they still wanted to become stronger, right? So they didn't have to deal with that, because whole thing is that it was used against them to be like, oh, this is your secret, you better commit murder, we're gonna tell your secret, right? And when everybody found out, of course there was initial shock. This is after Chihiro died, unfortunately. Of course there was initial shock, right? But for the most part, most characters were just like, oh dang, that's a twist. Now we got to deal with the twist. This person is dead. There are only a couple of characters who were shocked in a negative way about Chihiro, and they are immediately labeled as the weirdos. And it's because they thought that Chihiro was cute. Like, they thought Chihiro was cute, and they are immediately labeled as either bullies or weirdos, right? Everybody, the main characters of the first game who you are meant to root for, either don't care or accepting of it, or are Byakuya, and that's it. So like it is one of those things where regardless of whether or not you see Chihiro as trans or just a cross-dresser or whatever, the inherent queerness there of being like cross-dressing is still inherently queer. Hello. So like despite all of that, the fact that they're cross-dressing or possibly them being trans or any of that nature isn't seen as this like wholly bad thing of like, you know, what we usually see with these types of characters. They call them like, I don't even know if I could say the word. I'm gonna say the word trap. It's the word trap, right? Like, oh, you trapped somebody into thinking you were a male or a female or like whatever. It's usually female. And that is the way that it could go. And there definitely were undertones there. Don't get me wrong. This game came out in 2010. Do not get me wrong. There were definitely undertones there. But for the most part, the way that other characters react to that, especially the main characters that you are supposed to root for, is that they do not see this person as such. They saw this person as a friend, right? And Chihiro comes back later to help them out as like a alter ego, the like computer program, and they are happy for it. Like it never gets brought up like pretty much again, right? And so because of that, that's where I talk about like, was this rep handled the best? Probably not. Like what rep you even see from it, if you see it as any, probably fucking not, especially like I said, the way certain characters reacted. But the fact that it wasn't labeled as like, this is how you should be reacting. Because it was so easy to make the main character, whose name I forget, I'm so sorry. It's so easy to make him Makoto. It's so easy to try and make Makoto into like being like, ew, I cannot believe Chihiro lied to us and da-da-da-da. But that's not what happens, right? Chihiro is dead at this point and is still dealt with, at least by the main character, respectfully, of like, this is a friend who is now dead. And especially the whole arc with their death in the first place with Mondo, it is very tragic in that way, right? The both of them, it's very tragic, their story, and there's still like a lot of respect there with everything that happened, despite the fact that like Mondo was the one who killed Chihiro. It was not over that. It was over jealousy of Chihiro not letting Monokuma let that secret, you know, define them and let that secret take them to the point of murder. And that's what happened with Mondo. Mondo let the secret that Monokuma held over him take him to the point of murder, and he got jealous that Chihiro wasn't going to allow that to happen. Chihiro was going to get stronger physically so that they could be seen as a man, so they didn't have to have the secret in the first place, right? It was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. But like because of that, Mondo still respected the wishes and the secret of like Chihiro, to obviously not only just to throw everybody off his trail that he was the one who murdered him, but also the fact that like, oh, like I want to respect this person's wishes and who this person was, even in the end, regardless of like whatever. And I think that is why we could still like take this as like, okay, they were trying to do something here. There was some type of thing going on here. Even if it wasn't perfect, even if the representation wasn't the best, they still tried to do something here, and it wasn't overly disrespectful and used as a punching bag or a joke or anything like that. At least not by the characters that matter. Any character, like I said, who made fun of this or like said something weird about it is a weirdo or labeled as a bully. And I think that is the thing that matters in this case, especially with early depictions of this type of stuff, right? People talk a lot about like how reps should be included, and how people should handle queer characters. I think there were a lot of times when queer characters started showing up on screen, we wanted to be so like particular and kind of perfect about it. And as someone mentioned in these confessions, like Danganronpa is full of imperfect characters, and that means that if some of these characters are queer, they're going to also be imperfect and do shitty things and kind of be shitty people. And that is kind of what like queer people have been asking for ever since, like, you know, like Love, Simon came out, or Heartstopper. Like these are good representation. I'm never gonna like take that away, like that isn't good representation, but it is kind of like the baseline thing of like, you should see us as people type of representation. Like you should see us as people who laugh and love and all this type of stuff. And then from there, it should be, you should also see us as people who are capable of making mistakes and being assholes and having like a full rounded character arc, and to be able to be inserted into a show, movie, game, whatever, without having like it be like, oh, this person has to be the best person in the world because they're queer, right? They can also be assholes. They can also be villains and all this stuff without demonizing the queer part of them. Right. That's like what has been really tricky within, obviously it's gotten insanely better over the years, but like that has always been the tricky part about putting, especially in mainstream media, queer characters and queer people. It's just like, okay, you put this character in, but they're just like, la-di-da-di-da, I'm here and I'm queer. And that's about it. That's all you need to know about me, looking at you, Disney. Anyway, as I stated before, media where it is really easy to self-insert into is going to attract a large fan base. Harry Potter, the teen dystopia craze of the 2010s, and Danganronpa is definitely one of them. On top of everything I mentioned, Danganronpa is just weird, man. It's just a weird fucking game. And sometimes that is a good thing. And sometimes the game is weird. You can look up controversies within and without of the fandom, within the games themselves, and of course within the fandoms themselves, and you'll get a laundry list, wiki size, of like just the level of controversies both in and around the game, the development of the game itself, the fandom, all of it. It's just weird, dude. And you take it as you can get it, right? And of course, life imitates art. Some things are just like in a kooky, cute way with like character kidding and like whatever. And some things are committing literal crimes. The fandom is sure something. But of course, the media itself being weird is always going to draw queer people in. Queer people being called weird or fringe or alternative their entire lives are going to be drawn to more fringe, weird, alternative pieces of media. A group of eccentrically dressed crazy people get trapped on an island where they simultaneously have to kill one another in order to survive while also becoming friends with one another. Girl, that's just theater camp. I would know. I feel like it had the right amount of eccentricity and character-driven storylines and shipping potential to hit the right target audiences. Not to mention it being a visual novel and also a murder mystery, it could be likened to its predecessor, Ace Attorney, which also has a huge queer following. I feel like the reason a lot of queer people love Danganronpa is that none of the characters really fit into society. Like, every single one of them is strange and unique and undeniably different to societal norms, and it's a feeling that a lot of queer people can relate to. Being seen as different for having a specific talent, often presented as something innate or that chose them, is pretty similar to the queer experience of being seen as different for something you cannot choose. I think it's also a lot to do with the characters and their relationships with each other. Since they are all locked up together, rarely do you hear or see anything about family dynamics or any bonds they have with other people. Having a set cast means limiting the amount of relationships possible, and with the setting, a lot of the time, characters latch onto one another, which is something shippers love. There is so many different dynamics to explore between the cast, which is something a lot of queer people or shippers tend to enjoy, me included. At the end of the day, queer people are drawn to this space because it is one of the many few spaces queer people have to be themselves. When what you identify as is labeled as weird and unnatural, you tend to want to find spaces where it's okay to be that. It's a place where a chronic gambler and a princess from another nation obsessed with serial killers can exist, then why can't you as a queer person? Queer people love a good character design and an over-exaggerated personality trait. They are goofy-ass characters that play off each other well, and the premise of the games are extremely interesting. The art style is also very distinct, where everyone looks like a cardboard cutout and the lines are very bold, etc. The more unique the art style, the more queer people are drawn in, but that's just a personal opinion I have. Now look, I try to keep things lighthearted as possible on here. I don't talk about politics like straight out. I do talk about when politics have a place in media. I 100% believe that. I believe that everything is political. Sorry, I believe that everything is political. You exist in the context of everything that came before you and everything that will be. You didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. Thank you. But no, seriously though, I believe that everything is political. Art is political. Every single piece of art is fucking political, because you made it under the pretenses of the world you live in. You didn't just make it in a vacuum where nothing ever existed. The colors you chose, the characters you made, the things people say, the way in which they say them. Hey, all of that is political. One day I'll make that One Piece video. I promise. I promise. Maybe I'll make it before the end of the year. I'm trying. But anyway, the point is, I try to keep it upbeat despite all of that over here and not dive too deep into politics. Not because I don't believe that they are important, but because I do also believe in the idea of a safe space. I know, call me woke. Oh, she believes in safe spaces in 2025. Yes. But I believe that you have to create those safe spaces for yourself. You cannot expect somebody else to hold that safe space for you. So I did that. I created the safe space, not just for myself, but for you guys too. So we can talk free of judgment about our favorite shows, pieces of media, whatever, what have you. And I love when you guys leave extremely long comments when talking about something that you like, even if it's in disagreement with me, because I just want you to talk passionately about something in a place where you are safe to do so, right? And obviously, like I said, you're allowed to disagree with me as long as you are respectful, right? If you need to correct me on something, as long as you are respectful about it, be like, hey, by the way, this thing is actually this thing. I'm not going to be mad at you. I'm not going to delete your comment. I'll be like, oh, thank you. Because I don't want to spread misinformation. Trust me, after the last couple of fucking weeks on the internet, maybe I'll make a video about Legend CA. Maybe because the amount of misinformation I got spread about that game is, oh, the rage bait. Oh, anyway, but whatever. It can be really scary though to sit out here and say that this is a safe place for like queer people and people of color and all this other types of marginalized groups or like whatever. But I felt the need to do it. And if you haven't noticed, you probably haven't seen that many like hate comments in my comment section. And that's because I just don't get that many. Like genuinely, despite almost being at 30K, thank you. I just don't get that many hate comments. And I know like as I grow, I'll start to get randomly more and more and more. And I have gotten some in the past and I normally just delete them. I don't usually, unless someone like really needs to be educated on a subject, I usually just delete them, especially if they're just in bad faith, because it's not worth it. And it's not worth it for you guys. I don't even want you guys to have to deal with that stuff. So I just delete them and move on because it's my space and this is how I choose to want to curate my space. I'm not going to sit here and get into an argument with somebody who literally just wants to call me the N-word or fat or queer or ugly, whatever. Like I don't need to get into a space with that. So having a space that like has been curated to our own is important. And Danganronpa was one of those things, for better and for worse, that I feel like had a large queer following that got even bigger during like 2020 lockdown, which like, does anybody know why? Does anybody know why these games got really, really big during lockdown? I guess like they're 80-hour games. Like each game is like 80 hours. So I guess like, you know, lockdown's a perfect time to like, you know, play those games. But like, I guess also the cosplayers on TikTok who like, you know, were there when it was Musically, and then those TikToks went viral, and then so I guess people found out through that, I guess. But it's just interesting nonetheless. I'm sure somebody's made a video about it. But if it's one thing like about Danganronpa and why it got so big, especially among queer people and this channel, that I have learned is that you gotta find your tribe. You gotta keep looking and you will find your tribe. You just gotta keep looking and of course have hope. Whew, sorry, I got sappy at the end there, but I had to. It's my last video of October, and I always tend to get, like, every time I do a little challenge like this, I always tend to get a little sappy at the end because it's like a we did it, Joe type of situation. And this video is coming out on Halloween, which like, if you're a queer person, you fucking know Halloween is a big deal for us, okay? The drama. We talk about Danganronpa, the drama, the over-dramatization, the campiness of it all. Halloween has all of those things, which is why I wanted to talk about Danganronpa on Halloween. Well, not now, but like the video is going to come out on Halloween, right? And of course, I know that I missed some things, whether it be some themes or other stuff that you guys want to talk about. Go ahead and put it down in the comments. These games are each 80 hours long, like minimum. And that's of course not even including like the free time stuff, free roam stuff, and the extra character stuff that you can do and like talk to. And there's probably like specific character things about like queer themes and stuff like that. So put it all down in the comments below. Let's have a conversation. This is also one of those videos where I was just extremely kind of nervous about it. Not only because, you know, the fan base is very passionate, but also because it is talking about queer themes. And whenever you talk about queer themes or just themes in general that have anything to do with like politics, people will get upset with you about it, even if like, again, 90% of the fan base of Danganronpa is queer, and you guys showed out on the forum, so like I'm not surprised by that in the slightest. But like, you know, there's always those people out there. I still get messages on my Narusasu video to this day of people being like, why can't you just why does everything have to be queer? Why does everything have to be gay? And I'm like, why do you care, dude? Like, why do you care? Is it because you projected onto Naruto maybe a little too heavily? And now people are calling Naruto and Sasuke gay? Like that one clip from like the Boondocks. He was gay, ain't he? And that made me gay, don't it? That being said, if you watch all the way to the end, you are a real one. Thank you for joining me on this journey of all making a video every week in October. I thought it was gonna be 4, and I looked at the calendar. It's like, no, there are 5 Fridays in October, bitch. So get to it. It's kind of been rough. Things have been rough this month. Up and downs. It's been the highest highs and the lowest lows this month, but like we've gotten through it. I'm very excited for Halloween. I'm very excited to see. I see Yay Locor on the Thursday before this video comes out, so I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited. I need to figure out an outfit. Don't know what I'm gonna do, but also Halloween. This video comes out on Halloween, so you won't see my Halloween costume, but I'll post it on my socials. Come follow me on my socials. Speaking of, here are all my Patreons. At our little yapper tier, we have Vin T, Random Corner, Befuddled Puddle, Grey P, Adrian N, Soup, Mysterious Trumpet, Yosef, Broken Dreamy, Luna L, AC, Leela L, Reese F, Gianna M, Jester, Mal G, Vivian M, Basil, and Aaron. At our average yapper tier, we have Scout, Furby Bunny, Arapaima S, Twilby, Weirdo, and at our big time yapper tier, we have Covalence and Tybee. Thanks you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a very safe Halloween, a very fun, safe camp Halloween, And hey, I will see you in the next episode. It might be about fucking Daffy Duck and Donald Duck. Daffy Duck? Donald Duck? What the hell? Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny. I'm kind of going crazy. The next video might be about them because I'm back in the fucking building with them again. Talk about OG Yowie. Oh my god. Anyway, thank you for watching so much, and I will see you in the next episode. Love and peace. Bye. Happy Halloween. Woo.